Hey guys, welcome to Telling the Told and Untold. My name is Tshego. So for today's video, we're going to be covering the Van Breda case. So this case is very well known, not just in South Africa, but globally as well. And that's purely because the Van Bredas were a very well-known family. They were very wealthy, well off, and they were South African, but they did live in Australia for some time in their life. So the Van Bredas consisted of Martin, who is 54, Teresa, who is 55, Rudy, their son, 22, Henry, their second child, 20, and Marley, their one and only daughter, and their youngest, who is 16. So this case happened in January of 2015. So as I said before, the Van Bredas were very well-off, well-known family. They were from South Africa, but in 2008 they moved to Perth, Australia, and a couple of years later they decided to move to Queensland, still in Australia. The main reason they moved to Australia is because Martin was a managing director for an Australian company called Engels and Volker. I don't know if I should say it like that Afrikaans, considering the fact that it was like an Australian company, but I don't know how else to pronounce it. So yeah, Engels and Volker. According to their website, they sell and rent premium residential property, commercial real estate, and yachts. So, Martin was just a very wealthy man, had a lot of money, sent all three of his kids to private school, and they excelled well. A few sources did say that Henry did have a drug problem. Some sources say that he was addicted to tick. Some others don't mention what he was addicted to. I don't know if it's called tick everywhere or just in South Africa. So and yes, as I mentioned, the Van Bredas lived in Australia for a large portion of their lives. Martin always knew that he was going to move the family back to South Africa, so he didn't sell their South African home. It was a very big, beautiful home in an estate called Dezelda in Stellenbosch, Western Cape. A very wealthy estate, just those type of estates. They moved back to South Africa the end of November in 2014, and this case happened on the 27th of January 2015. So the morning of January 27th, around about 7:10, 7:15, 10:11 received a call from Henry Van Breda, their second son. He called them claiming that an axed man had broken into the house and basically killed his family. I'll if I can find the tape, I'll put it in right now.
107, what is your emergency?
I need an ambulance. Lots of
You need an ambulance?
Yes, please.
What's your name, sir?
Henry from Breda.
Henry. What's the contact number you're phoning from?
My home phone number, but I'm not sure what the home phone number is. My cell phone. We're at 12 Husker Street, please.
What is this number that you're phoning from? Is there someone else that can speak if you're not able to?
No.
Who else is in the house?
There's no one else.
Everyone else. I need the contact number, please.
Yeah, okay. 021
021
8800
8800
493
493. And you need the ambulance to go to what?
Number 12 Husker Street.
Hoskes.
Husker. G-O-S.
G-O-S.
K-E.
What area is this?
It's in Stellenbosch, and it's in Dezelda estate.
As you can hear from the call, Henry sounds calm, almost calm, nonchalant. The call lasted about 20 to 30 minutes. Yeah, the call lasted about 20 to 30 minutes, but it took the operator approximately 10 minutes for her to get the correct address, because it was back and forth between her and Henry, as I mentioned before, they had just moved back to South Africa, had only been back home for about 3 months. So I'm sure he also didn't really know the area that well. But I'm sure the first thing you do learn is your address. But also the operator kept saying that she couldn't find it on the system. So, it was just trying to just figure out the correct address. He kept like stating that no, it's in the state, trying to direct it, because Stellenbosch isn't really that big. So I am assuming there aren't that many estates where you'd struggle to find the correct one. So after back and forth, they finally agreed on the address, and she was trying to get police officers there as well as medics sources as to what time police officers and ambulances arrived on the scene. So I can't really give you like a specific time, but considering that the phone call lasted 20 to 30 minutes, like round about there, so they arrived on the scene, and when they entered the house, it was just a gruesome scene. There was blood everywhere. One of the paramedics was later described saying that it was almost as if it was a waterfall of blood flowing down the stairs. So I think you can just like grasp how, it was just a very bloody scene. And just, yeah. So when they got there, Mari was barely holding on. Surprisingly, she was alive, so she went straight into the ambulance and they took her to the nearest private hospital. Unfortunately, in the house, they found Martin, Teresa, and Rudy. All three of them were deceased with obvious wounds to their heads. The ambulance took both Marley and Henry to the hospital, obviously just for further care, considering how gruesome the scene was, how Marley was barely holding on. She had lost a lot of blood. Marley was immediately taken into surgery, and Henry, however, according to the pathologist, had only superficial wounds around his hand. So there was nothing serious, which was also a bit surprising. So they just cleaned him up very quickly, and then he was interviewed to ask what happened. So according to Henry, that night everything seemed normal. Everybody went to bed, and in the middle of the night, or the earlier hours of the 27th of January, he woke up, he went to the bathroom to use the toilet, and as he was in the toilet, he kind of heard something through the passage. So through the cracked door, he looked through it and he saw a man that had a balaclava over his head and was holding an axe. So obviously Henry says that he really couldn't see because he was in the bathroom and was only peeking through a small piece, but he heard screaming and cries, and then he decided he's gonna go out and try and stop it somehow. So he said that he went to the alleged attacker and tried to fight him off. At this point, the attacker had a knife, so he tried stabbing Henry and also tried slitting his throat, but he didn't succeed. And then next thing you knew, Henry fell unconscious. But Henry did mention the fact that the intruder didn't go to the bathroom, because obviously that's where he was and that's where he came out. Only saw the attacker in the passage and going to his oldest brother's room, which was Rudy. From this story, police officers kind of tried to figure out who would break into their house, how would they break into the house, because as I mentioned, it was a very well-off estate. So this estate had security guards at the front, had high walls with electric fencing around it. There were cameras almost in every corner. So it kind of seemed impossible, how someone would go through all those channels and wouldn't get caught and would break into the house. Police officers also discovered that nothing was missing from the house. They found the axe that was used as well as the knife. The knife came from a kitchen set came from a knife set rather in the kitchen. Those kitchen sets, those knife sets that have, those knives. So at this point, Madeline is still in hospital. She was admitted into ICU. She was in very bad condition. She had a lot of defensive wounds on her hands. You can see that she put up a fight. She had approximately 5 axe wounds to her skull, and her jugular artery had been slit. So she had lost a lot of blood, and doctors were surprised that she had survived this attack. So autopsies were done on Martin, Teresa, and Rudy, and it was found that they really suffered. Teresa had about 3 axe wounds to her head, Rudy had 4 axe wounds to his head, and Martin had approximately 5 axe wounds. Some sources say all of them were to his head, others say some were like on his back. So I'm gonna go with the latter, just because when police officers arrived at the house, Teresa was found in the passage along with Marley, whereas Rudy was found in his bedroom with Martin on top of him, almost as if, like kind of like protecting him, like in a protective way. And all of them really they had like very minor defensive wounds. Martin, however, had no defensive wounds at all, which you kind of would expect if it appears as though like he was trying to protect his son, so wasn't really like concerned, had his back to the alleged attacker. So yeah, those were their injuries. After looking at the scene and looking how everyone had like gruesomely been attacked, and Henry barely had like, he didn't have any wounds, he only had like superficial cuts, and it just seemed like very odd that if someone came to presumably rob their house because they were a wealthy family, why they wouldn't take anything first of all, and if they had a certain way of like killing everyone, why wouldn't they do that to Henry, even if it was just 1 wound or something? It was just like few cuts from a knife, whereas everyone else was attacked with an axe. So that also didn't make sense. So kind of from that point, police officers had their eyes set on Henry. There were quite a few holes with his story. So the first hole with Henry's story is that he said the first thing he did when he woke up was call 10111 at 12 minutes past 7. However, police officers pulled phone records and they found out that the first call he made was at 4:42, so about 20 to 5 in the morning, and it was to his girlfriend, and that call went unanswered. And then he later called his girlfriend at 20 past 7 the next morning. So that's after he called 10111. So he called 10111 at 12 minutes past 7, and then and then called his girlfriend at 20 past 7, but that call also went unanswered. But a lot of sources did say that the call went for about 20-30 minutes, so I assume he called the 911 operator, kind of got frustrated, dropped the call, tried calling his girlfriend, and then called the 10111 operator again. So that also didn't make sense, because if he did wake up at a certain time, the first thing he did was call 10111. Why was there like a 2-hour difference between like the first call and the call to 10111? Also, the autopsy revealed that the family had been killed around 3 in the morning. They had been killed around 3 in the morning, because there was a 2-hour difference between when the murders happened and his first call, and then 2 more hours between that call and the call to 10111. So the hours between like 3 in the morning to past 7 in the morning, it was just very dodgy. The second hole in Henry's story is that police officers found a blood trail leading to the bathroom, and according to Henry's story, the intruder didn't go into the bathroom, so there was a blood trail leading into the bathroom. And then there was evidence that the axe was washed in the sink. And if you remember Henry's story from the beginning, he was the only one in the bathroom. He was in the bathroom when everything happened, and then he came out of the bathroom. So that also didn't make sense. Also, they took his clothes from that day. He was wearing gray sweatpants and had white socks on. There was nothing mentioned about like a top or anything else, so I assume he was just shirtless. So his pants had blood stains on it, which kind of could be expected because it was a really bloody scene. But considering the fact that he didn't really have any cuts, it was kind of odd as well. And then his socks were also drenched in blood, and blood tests later revealed that it was his father's blood as well as Rudy's blood, which also didn't make sense because in his story he made no mention of going to the room to go check like if anyone was awake, because he just assumed that everyone was deceased. Not really another hole, but something else that came up from the investigation when they interviewed the 10111 operator is that she mentioned when she answered the call, he kind of giggled first before saying that an axed intruder came into the house.
What is your emergency?
Yeah.
She claims that is one of the reasons she didn't take the call seriously, and maybe that also makes sense as to why, if you listen to the call, you can find the whole phone. I'm not sure if the whole phone call or like the first 10 minutes where you can hear that she's not really, like it's as though she's not really taking it seriously. And then later on in the call, when she asks about the injuries, Henry says that his family is bleeding from the head, and after he says that, he starts giggling again, which is also pretty strange. Why are you giggling? As I mentioned before, the knife that police officers found on the scene did come from the Van Breda kitchen. It was from a knife set, but then they also discovered that the axe that was used also belonged to the Van Bredas and was stored I think in the garage with the rest of like the tools that you would use usually like outside in the garden or something, So when they thought about it, really didn't make sense why someone would come rob them or come like murder them, but wouldn't come like with their own weapons. And even if you would say that, okay, it was like a murder of opportunity and they just found like a weapon that they like any weapon around, the axe didn't stay in the house. So it's almost as though if you wanted to use specifically an axe, you had to know where the axe belonged. And an interview later done with the helper of the house, she said that she did identify that both the axe and the knife belonged to the Van Bredas as well. So that was also a bit dodgy. So Henry claimed that he didn't know the numbers for 10111, so he searched the number, which is true from the call logs that they pulled up and his internet history. They did see that he did search for emergency numbers in South Africa, specifically Stellenbosch. However, he did this like right after calling his girlfriend, so that also is a bit weird if you consider the timeline of the phone calls, because he called his girlfriend around 20:05 and then searched the number for 10111 straight after that, so still before 5, and then only called them 2 hours later as well. And also the phone that he used was in the kitchen, and if you look up, there was a magnet with all the emergency numbers right in front of the phone as well. So it didn't make sense why he would have to like search the number when it was right in front of him. Like he picks up the phone and the numbers are like right there. Do I make sense? After gathering all this evidence, police officers wanted to find out what reason Henry would have to murder his entire family. So the first thing that would make sense is to interview Marley. However, she did survive the attack and she was stable. However, she did suffer from what they call retrograde amnesia, so she had no recollection of the night, she had no memories of the night whatsoever. So she really couldn't be much help to them, which sometimes I think about it and I don't know if it's like a blessing or a curse, just in that, you know, she doesn't remember that night. Like, as I mentioned before, she had like a lot of defensive wounds compared to everybody else, which means she did put up a fight. So she saw her attacker, you know, she went through that. Can you imagine that fear of like fighting for your life, also not knowing whether like your brother did it, like is he guilty, is he innocent, like all these questions that you have like running through your head. I think it's like, I don't know if it's a blessing or not to not remember like such a traumatic event, because obviously you did lose your entire family. I can't imagine how painful that would be. But is it better that she doesn't remember it, or would it be better if she did remember it? I don't know. I'm very conflicted about that. So with all this evidence, police officers probably had enough to take Henry to court, and obviously because it was a big family, it was a case that was known globally, so everyone knew it. It was on every news channel, you know, your Daily Mail, from like your Daily Mail to your E-News to CNN. It was a very like big, well-known case, and everyone knew Henry's face. Everyone knew Henry van Breda, that this man could be guilty of killing his entire family. So about 18 months after the incident, Henry finally decided to turn himself in. And throughout his entire 67-day trial, Henry van Breda did claim that he was innocent until the very end. On the 21st of May 2018, Henry van Breda was found guilty of 3 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and defeating the ends of justice. On the 7th of June 2018, he was sentenced to 3 life terms for the murder of his mother, father, and brother. He was also sentenced to 15 years for the attempted murder of his sister, and a further 12 months for obstruction of justice. And that is it for today's video. If you guys have any thoughts or opinions, please leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, and see you guys in my next video. Bye.